Guys, thank you so much for watching another video. Today we're moving on to our metal and rock series. So we're going to be doing a lot more with drums, guitars. We're still going to be doing vocals, things of that nature. It's going to be really cool. It's going to be really fun. So today we're starting off, we're mixing GGD I've worked with a lot of virtual drums in the past. And I just wanted to check out GGD, see what they had to offer. I know their modern and massive kit, pretty popular. They got some really good tracks and stuff that were actually built off of the GGD modern and massive. So I wanted to give it a shot, and today I'm going to show you how I mix it. So guys, let's hop right into the program here. As you can see, I've already drawn up some MIDI here. Let me pull up Contact. So here is GGD Modern and Massive, which is what I'm using. If you're using another one, that's totally fine. But the first thing that you guys need to figure out how to do is route out each piece of the kit. So the snare, the toms, the kick, the overheads, the room mics, everything. What I have going on here is the kick, kick out, snare, snare bottom, all three toms. I have the hi-hat, I have the overheads, and then I have the three room mics. Now it's up to you. If you want to have a separate kick in and kick out and a separate snare top and snare bottom, I would recommend doing that. That way you can really get the most out of your mixing and really fine tune it in to what you guys, how you guys want it to sound and how you want your mix to actually come out. And it's going to help in the long run. Now, if you guys don't know how to route everything out, it's actually pretty straightforward. I think GGD posted maybe 2 videos, one in Logic and one in Studio One. If you're using Cubase, Pro Tools, or anything like that, I'm sure you can find a video on it. So once you guys have everything routed, you'll see the kit here. You have quite a few different selections of snares to go with. I'm using the Ludwig Superphonic, an array of toms here. I think I'm using the Tom Star Classics for my first 2 toms here, and then I've got the Yamaha Recording Custom Birch. You get 2 floor toms. So the cymbals pretty much stay the same here. You get a couple different options, which is cool. The ride here, there's a couple. This crash up here, you got a couple. And for the China here, you know, you only get 1 option, but that's okay. I like how it sounds. You know, there's a few different kicks here to choose. Then obviously you're going to go ahead into your MIDI. If you don't know how to do that in Studio One, you're just going to right click, edit track, and it's going to pull that up for you. If you have several MIDI instruments here, then you would have to go to this drop down. I only have one here, which is GGD inside of Contact. You know, when you're doing this, you want to make sure your velocity of your notes is changed up to a real kit. You want to give it that real feel, add some dynamics in there. You want to put ghost notes on the snare, all that jazz, just to make it as realistic as possible, having dynamic hits in there. So whatever velocity you're putting, you're getting a different sound. You can see I have a lot of different hits here on my cymbals and everything. To get that loud and powerful punch, you're going to want to turn your velocity all the way up on your kick and snare most of the time, unless you're doing ghost notes. Or you can see I have a couple double bass type things here, and my velocity is a little bit lower on these guys. Just to give you an example, I will play this. I'll solo it out. So as you can see, my hi-hats here really fluctuate. It's kind of given that quarter note feel, but really it's playing 16ths. And how I achieve that is every other 16th is really low in velocity, almost half as much as the other one. So you're getting a quarter note feel, but really he's playing 16ths on the hi-hat like a real drum player would play. Keep those things in mind. You want to make it as realistic as possible before you even start mixing. You know, same thing with the toms. I think these guys, I had full velocity on them, but sometimes, you know, I'm not even doing that, especially if there's a fast tom fill, like in here, you know. So moving on, guys, I'm going to take you through my mixing process. So I'm going to open up the console here. Once you have everything routed to a multi-output within Contact, you need to go at least inside of Studio One. Now, this may be different in other DAWs, but inside of Studio One, you need to open up Instruments, and that's right here. So you would click Instruments, pull up Contact here, and then you'll see your different multi-outputs. So select all those, and you got them right here. So we're going to start here with the kick. I'll solo it for you, and I'll walk through what exactly I did for it. Now, I'm not doing a whole lot because these samples are great. They recorded them well. So I'm going to go ahead and solo this and let you guys check it out. So pretty basic kick in. I mean, very clean signal. Not too much going on there. All I have is the CLA 76, the Blackie, and just a little bit of compression on it. And then I got an EQ here, taking out a little bit, just that boomy range, about 150 here. And then adding a little bit of top end too. I really want that snap in there. I mean, it already comes with a little bit of snap, but I want to get even more out of that as much as I can. And then we need our punch. So obviously with the kick out, we're going to get a lot of sub. That's how it is alone. I don't need any high end or anything in that, so I'm totally taking that out. Again, in that boomy section, a little bit of dip, really boosting this low end here so I can get that volume up, you know. And you can achieve this just by making a cut and then taking maybe a mix tool or just an EQ and just raising the dB on it. But I decided to put a boost here. It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. Even if you want to use an SSL EQ or anything, it doesn't really matter. But for me, I added a boost here. So I'll play the kick alone, and then I'll play the kick with the kick out. So it just adds that thud and that punch to our kick that we're really looking for there. So moving on, we're going to go to the snare. You really want that to stand out. It's going to make or break your mix a lot of the time. So very important piece of the kit. This is by itself, and then I'll throw in the virtual mix rack here by Slate Digital, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing in there. So really cool that you get that snare bleed there from GGD in Modern and Massive, and I think older kits do that. I know you can do that in other virtual kits like SSD5. And here's the virtual mix rack. I'm gonna show you what exactly is going on in here. So lots going on. We got a little bit of a jump in volume, a little bit more high end on there. We could actually take that off. I think that's around 7 to 8K. A little bit too much for my taste, so I'm gonna take that off. A little bit in that presence range, you know, around 1.5 to 2K. I'm just taking like not even a dB off, because sometimes I can get a little bit overpowering there. And also our vocal range sits there. I want to be mindful of that, not touching anything here. And then I'm adding a bunch of low end around 200, and then I'm also cutting, you know, around 100, 115 here. So it's giving us a boost and a cut at the same time, kind of balancing that out. But we want to keep that low end in there. We don't want any sub range or anything below 100. And then I have a compressor here. I like this red one, the FG401. Just, you know, a slower attack, quicker release. And then I set the threshold, so we're taking about 5, maybe up to 7 dB off. Let's check that out. And then I got the mix set to 50, so we're really only affecting 50% of the audio file there. We don't want to crush the dynamics or anything. We do want it to have that compression feel. Then I've got the virtual channel, just adding some drive, some grit to it. I got the drive cranked all the way up. I have noise reduction selected on, and then I've got the input up too. I just want it, you know, to get to that red range there. No group. I like it on the Brit 4K channel there. I think it has a really nice vibe. I'll switch in between these, maybe the USA or the RC tube. Really up to you guys, personal preference. I mean, you don't even have to use the virtual mix rack here. That's just something that I like to do. Next, we got the PUTAC just with the wood snare setting. A little bit of a peak at 1.5 and a little bit of a dip. So again, balancing that sound out a bit with the cut and a dip. We have another boost at 200 hertz here, getting that low end in there, and I'm gonna show you what this does for us, guys. So just adding that 2 end in there is actually going to give us more punch for the snare. It's going to help it come out more. You're going to hear the thud of the snare, which is really cool. A lot of guys just turn up the high end thinking that's going to boost their snare and have it come out in the mix, and it's really not. You got to add a little bit of low end in there, sometimes a lot of low end. This really helps with that. It's the Waves PUTAC plugin here. Now what we can do on this as well, add an EQ, because there is a little bit of ring in there. Sometimes we want to take that out. Sometimes we want to keep it. So I'm going to go ahead and add the EQ by Slate Digital here. We're going to go ahead and listen back, see if we can find anything that's too boomy, any high end that hurts our ears, any unwanted rings that we have in there that we could get out. So I'm actually going to do a cut first. All this sub range, you know, where our kick and our little bit of our bass is, probably just going to take that out, honestly. We don't need all of that. So I'm going to go ahead, play it back and listen to where I think that we need to take that out. Yeah, we just don't need all that there. I'm gonna listen up here for any frequencies that I think are a little bit out of hand. Make a real small notch. All right, maybe just a tiny bit out of here because we still want that ring in there. We don't want to get too crazy. We don't want to take that out entirely. We want that in there. And then there's another, like a secondary ring going on down here, so I want to take that out. I'm going to do the same exact thing, listen for it, and just scoop that out a tiny bit. All right, that's pretty cool there. Like I'm hardly doing anything here, but it's gonna help out, you know. If you get too many of these frequencies going on in the mix, it's gonna screw your whole mix up. So I just wanna clean things up as I go. It's totally up to you if you guys wanna do that or not, but I think this helps. So moving on, we got the bottom snare. This one I really EQ. I mean, I don't wanna get the actual hit of it in there. It's up to you guys, you know, whatever tone you're going for. A little bit of that rattle of the chain, that's it. So off and on. So this is doing a lot here. You know, we're taking out the thud of the snare. We don't want that, any of that low end. We just want a little bit of that rattle in there. And then to, you know, intensify that a little bit, I've got the Kilohertz Faturator on. I'm adding a bit of drive, bit of fuzz, bit of color. Got the mix all the way up on that. Really cool plugin. You guys should check that out if you can. And we'll listen to what that's doing. Okay, and then we'll play them both the snare top and bottom together. Now, if you guys want to go a step further, we'll jump back to the snare top here. If you want to go for more of an analog feel, you can always add the Virtual Tape Machine by Slate, and we'll go 15 IPS, FG 456, and then we'll do on a 216 tape. Probably turn the input up a tiny bit here, and we'll check that out. So I might even throw that above the virtual mix rack. All right, guys, so we got the Virtual Tape Machine on there. It's just gonna give us a little bit of an analog feel, and it's actually gonna cut some of those transients out. This is a technique that Chris Lord-Alge likes using, you know, because he's used to working with analog stuff, and it helps him mix a little bit here and there. But I like having those transients in, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna find a transient shaper, and I'm gonna use the Kilohertz transient shaper here. I'm just gonna add a little bit of attack and a little bit of sustain, that's it. All right, so that's pretty cool there with our bottom snare. So we got a lot of crack in there, a lot of grit, a lot of low end, and I think it's coming out really well. So with toms, I don't do too much. Sometimes I will throw an EQ on there. We're just gonna leave them how they are right now. Hi-hat, I may throw an EQ on here, so let's check that out. I'm gonna take a little bit of low end out. We don't need all that clunkiness in there. Maybe a little bit of it. And that's good for now. If I need to clean up any high end or anything, I'll do that in the bus. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the hi-hats and the overheads and I'm gonna put them in a bus. And we're gonna name that the overhead bus. Take my kicks, put them in a kick bus. Take my snare tracks, put them in a snare bus. Then I will take my toms, put those in a tom bus. Last but not least, we'll take our room mics and we will add those to a room bus. And then all of our buses here are going to be feeding into one single drum bus. So moving on, we've got the overheads. And for this, I've just got a simple limiter going on. I'm using the CLA-2A stereo. I really like this on overheads. I think it smooths it out so much. I'm almost always using a limiter. So I'm going to open this up and we're going to check out what that's doing. I'll turn it off at first. So what else I think we can do is probably add another EQ here. Just take out that low end again like we did with the hi-hats. Then I'm also going to scoop a little bit of 1K out just to get, you know, the snare and that presence type frequency out of there. I just want to hear, you know, tiny bit of low end, maybe 100, 200 hertz, and then a little bit of that high end in there too. So I'm going to scoop out a little bit around 1K and we're going to check that out. The thing that's good for now, again, we'll clean things up in the bus. So I'm gonna leave that how it is. Let's check out the room, see what we got going on. So we have our mono track. I don't think I have anything going on for this. I'm gonna leave it how it is. Then we got the room close. We got a lot going on here. We got the Kramer Pi, which I just talked about, and we're using the Super Smash close room settings on our close mic. You know, thresholds way down, outputs way up, and it's just really smashing the heck out of it. Really getting all those frequencies just to sound like they exploded in a room, and it sounds pretty sweet in my opinion. So that's gonna add that big explosion type sound to your drum kit. EQ got a little bit going on here, actually a lot, all the way cut up to 200, and we're adding quite a bit of high end on that. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually bring a little bit of low end back in and raise the high end a little bit down. We don't need all of that there, so let's check that out. All right, so that's cool. We just didn't want too much high in there. You know, it's gonna hurt the ears if you got it cranked up. I did want a little bit of low end in there. We just don't want to get it to a point where it's too boomy. And same thing, I scooped a little bit of 1K out there. Moving on to our room far. This one's fine. I'm not gonna EQ it too much. I got the CLA 76 on there with the Rock My Room setting, and that's pretty much it for that one. So all three, we have this. So moving on, we are now going to our bus tracks. So here's the kick. So we've already compressed and EQ'd that. I think it sounds great. I'm not even gonna touch this. If you guys want, you can send it out, you know, to an effects track. Maybe throw our bass on here, really have that punch come out. But for right now, I think it's good. I'm not even gonna touch it. Snare. We could probably clean this up a little bit. So I'll throw an EQ on it. So there's a lot of sub range in there. I'm just gonna cut that out right now. Bring this up. Get a little bit too much ring in there, so I'm gonna take that out. And then from this point on, I mean, it's really up to you guys how present you want your snare, how much high end you want on it. And just for fun, I'm gonna go ahead and throw on one of the SSL plugins. Let's go with the G channel strip here, throw that on, and we'll put a little bit of high end on it. So I'm hardly touching it. I got like 0.5 to 1.5 dB at 8K, a little bit of almost 3K in there, you know, another dB, and another dB at 250, almost 300 hertz. So really not doing much, but just to show you guys, you know, you can tweak it after the fact in the bus and clean it up a little bit more. Toms, I may just add an EQ. Maybe just a tiny bit of that mid-range out of there. I mean, they sound great to me already. And again, you can send these out to, you know, effects tracks, reverbs, whatever you want, whatever type of drum kit you guys are going for. But for me, I think it sounds pretty good. I may just clean it up a bit here. So I still want that low in there, I still want that high in there, so I'm going for sort of a sweeped feel. You know, high or lows and highs, and really cutting that mid out. This is where a lot of the boxy frequencies are, around this 500 range, probably around 300 to 900 hertz. So I'm cutting it, let's see here, 442 is where I felt like a lot of that boxiness was. Just a little bit here, 3-4 dB. Keeping all my high end in there. I really like the snap of the skins, you can hear them, and I really like this low, but we don't need all this sub range in here, so I'm cutting that out. This is on my bus, so it affects all my toms, and I'm okay with that. Moving on, we'll switch this, we'll go to overheads real quick, and we'll check that. We might need to do a lot of work here just to clean up those high frequencies, but we'll check it out. Now, if you notice before, I put a limiter on just the stereo track itself. If I knew how to do it in Studio One, I would do a dual mono, so it would affect the right, and it would be a separate plugin for the left channel. That way, if you have something really heavy going on, really loud on the right, it's not squashing the left as well. It's only affecting that right channel. Unfortunately, I have it on as a stereo limiter, so if that were to happen, it would affect the left channel, and I probably will figure it out, but for right now, it's fine. We'll leave it how it is. All I'm gonna do is just clean up some of those frequencies. So again, the EQ here, and we'll take a listen. Okay guys, so just making a cut here. We don't need all of that. A little bit of some weird low end going on down here, so I cut that out. And then just some things that were a little bit overpowered, maybe around 3K here, and some things around 10K I didn't really like. Just cutting out, you know, really small notches here, but -3 dB. Just making it more pleasant for the ears. And of course you could throw a limiter on here, you could use Soothe. Dynamic EQ would be great to put on here, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just doing this, and it's working pretty okay for right now. Moving on, we're gonna go to the room mics. So once again, right here, you know, I may throw another compressor on. I think what's most important to do is clean it up a little bit. So again, with the EQ, and I know guys, I'm using the Slate digital EQ here, the Infinity EQ. You guys can use whatever EQ works for you. It does not matter. You guys can take out whatever you think sounds great. I'm just showing you the way that I'm doing it right now and what works for me. So hopefully this can help you guys out, but I'm not telling you to do it exactly how I'm doing it. I want you to do it how you want to do it. Okay guys, so another sub cut. You don't want it to be too overly punchy over here. It's going to take away from your mix. And then just some high end that was a little bit out of control that I felt that needed cut out. And then just a little bit in that boxy range. It's okay for the overheads to be a little bit boxy. That's kind of the feel they have anyways. So I just kept it how it was, really. So together we'll play it back. And the good thing about having everything in buses is that we can actually level it out. That's pretty good. I might actually lower the overheads a bit here, and then I'm going to turn down my room bus just so I can hear the kick and the snare with the overheads. Once I feel that's in a nice spot, I'm going to bring up the room just so I can hear it, so it adds, you know, some width and some life, and just make the drums sound big, but you don't want to overdo it. So get to that point and maybe bring it back a hair. So we'll check that out. So that's where I like it right now, and it's totally up to you guys how much room you want in there. Obviously, you're going to have bigger space. Your drums are going to sound a lot bigger, but sometimes it takes away from the presence of the drum kit itself. So just be mindful of that. So that's pretty good. Now we're going to go to our drum bus. Here I've got the CLA mix hub, which I really like for EQing things, adding a bit of compression. So I'll throw that on and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. Okay guys, so a little boost at 10K, a little bit at 4.5. I decided to leave 1K alone. I think we had enough there. And then a boost down here at around 65 Hertz, almost up to 3 dB, 2.5 there. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of the analog emulated saturation by turning this mic input up a bit here. So what we want to do now is be super mindful of our levels. We really don't want this to exceed past native 6 dB. We need to leave some headroom here for when we get our other instruments in there. All I'm going to do is I'm not even going to touch the fader here. A lot of my leveling is done within the plugin. I'm gonna go ahead and play it back, and I'll probably adjust it within the mix hub. That's pretty good there. And then all I'm gonna do now is add a little bit of compression. So I got the CLL comp. I'm using the West Drum Bus setting. All I'm gonna do here is adjust my threshold. I don't want my makeup to be any higher because I like the level where it's at. So I'm gonna leave it at 0. That's pretty good there. I don't want it to exceed past 4, and my level is still good. But here's the drums all together with all the mixing that we did so far. And here are the drums with all of those plugins turned off. So not a huge amount of difference there, just a lot of boxiness taken out. We got a lot more presence in there and space to work with, which is really cool, and it's gonna gel well with the rest of our instruments. I'll go ahead and show you guys how to actually fit that in the mix. So one more important thing, guys, that we didn't add here yet is the parallel compression. Now it's a pretty big technique used by a lot of guys, and the way that I do this is I'll send every individual track out to my parallel compression bus, which I have labeled P-comp, parallel compression, set right here, and I am using the SSL comp for that. Now what you want to do, I'm just using the default setting here, but you want to have really slow tack, really fast release, and you want to set the threshold pretty high, but not to a point where it's taken away. So let's go ahead and we'll just solo the parallel compression track, and I'll let you know what's going on. So you want to have it, at a setting where you're just really getting that slappiness out of the skins, the kick and the snare. You hear a little bit of cymbals in there. You don't want to go too much, otherwise it's going to take away from the snare and the presence of all that. That's really what you're getting, is just a lot of that slap and crack out of the snare. I just think it's a really cool sound that you can blend in with your drums. What I'll do is I'll start with it all the way off. I'll have the drums in, and then I'll bring it up just to where I feel that it needs to go. So that's really cool. I like that there. Now what I'm going to do, guys, is show you how to actually blend that in with your other instruments. Here I have a bass. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it in mono. It really helps out when you're mixing things, just to hear things in mono first and then bring it into stereo. I've already got the bass mixed and the guitar mixed. And if you guys want to check out and see how I'm doing that, I'm going to put some videos up real soon here mixing those instruments. But for right now, let's go ahead and put the bass in. Keep in mind, guys, if you want your drums to stand out, your other instruments are going to have to be lower. And when you're in mono, it is harder to hear instruments, especially if they're spread. Like my bass is a little bit spread and my guitars are definitely spread. So it's okay if you can bring it up to a point where you can just hear it, because when you bring it into stereo, you're definitely going to be able to hear them. So just keep that in mind. So right now we can just hear the bass, and I kind of like where it's at, so I might leave it. Yeah, so I'm going to leave that there, and now what I'm going to do is bring in the guitars. Now a lot of mixes, modern mixes, you definitely want the guitars to be pretty present, cleaned up a bit too as well. But for demonstration purposes, for drums right now, we're just gonna focus on leveling them. So I'm gonna bring this up, typically is a little bit louder than the bass just to bring some presence. Let's tweak that, get it perfect real quick, and then I'll show you everything together in stereo. Yeah, so I think that's pretty good there. Let's go ahead and we'll play everything back in stereo and check out our track now. Alright guys, so that's you know how I go about my process. It's not exact every time, but that's a lot of the same stuff that I try to do, and that's how I level it, that's how I bring the instruments in. I think we got a pretty good result going through that today. I hope that helped you guys out. If it did, please leave a like and a comment. Be sure to subscribe because I'm going to have a lot more videos like this coming out in the near future. Thanks a lot guys, I'll see you in the next vid.